because, you know, will it be relevant in the next 6 months? At the moment, you know, lots of demands are changing on our workforce. So will it still be relevant in 6 months' time? Do that evaluation piece. And if you included your people in the strategy at the beginning and went out and asked them for what they wanted, maybe go back now and ask for their feedback. Is it working? Does it still fit? And then we had 37% that said that they were unsure, okay, if that your wellbeing plan was supporting your employees. So again, the advice here, some tips you might want to try. So, you know, get out and listen, ask, see what your people, you know, what your staff want, what your staff need. And this can be done via focus groups. It's really quite helpful. So maybe pull together some focus groups, review existing data as well. So if you were measuring sickness or absenteeism or presenteeism or accident rates, have a look at that too. Get out, listen, engage with your people, and measure the impact of that. And there was 8% that said that you didn't have a wellbeing initiative in place, but you're keen to know more about how you can do this. This requires quite a long conversation, but I'd most definitely advise you to consider your overall business strategy, first of all, where health and wellbeing fits within that, and start with an audit. Okay, look at already existing data that you have, and then start from there. But if you want any further support with that, I'd suggest you reach out to us, and one of our wellbeing consultants can talk to you about how you can get this started. Okay, because a wellbeing strategy, you know, there's lots of different types that fit all different types of budgets and objectives. I've got a checklist here actually that I can share with you all now, but if you would like it afterwards, this is quite a helpful checklist that we provide our clients with. And it's just a bit of a gauge as to a helpful reflection to where you might be at the moment and where you might want to go next. So where you are with your health and wellbeing strategy checklist. So if anybody would like that, please do reach out at the end and I can send that to you. But let's look at, you know, assuming that mental health is very high on a lot of your agendas this year, for a lot of you here today, I'd like to just take some time to reflect on the current environment, because we're in this period of transition at the moment, aren't we, with kind of the going back to work, thinking about getting back to the office possibly. And some of our, you know, the returning to work, it has its psychological advantages and disadvantages, and, you know, another transition that people are having to deal with. For some people, returning to work, it might be a protective factor for their mental health, and for others it might be more strain for them. You know, we might feel closer to our colleagues but maybe separated from our families. We spent a lot of time with them, haven't we, during this year working from home. And some people might actually reconnect with that sense of purpose, and other people might feel a little bit disconnected or lost. So our tips here at Hope Health is to have that clear communication, to lift any anxiety about coming back to work, the workplace. Okay, let people know what that roadmap is of coming back to work, as Boris has done with us as a nation about that roadmap of coming out of lockdown. So that people aren't left kind of filling in the blanks and that anxiety is subsiding. But you might think about reintroducing people back into the organisation as well. Lots of clients have been working on virtual orientations about what the office now looks like, if things have changed, maybe even doing that induction, so a back to work induction, and aligning that with the individual's health and well-being as well. So maybe scheduling return to work meetings for each person, explaining that roadmap to recovery, answering any questions that person might have, and realigning any goals. There might be an increase in one-to-ones initially, in the initial weeks back to work. You might want to consider that as well. But encourage that candid conversation and that reflection about how that person feels about coming back into the workplace. Okay, acknowledge that some people might be experiencing that anxiety about coming back to the workplace, and normalise that, normalise the mixed feelings. We're also seeing as well a change in values and expectations. So, you know, living and working through this pandemic over the last year, it may have changed some of our values and expectations at work. From recent studies, we've discovered that employees now place a greater expectation and emphasis on their own health and well-being as a result of this pandemic. You know, they want a work-life balance. They value self-care. Working from home has obviously had its challenges if you've been homeschooling and working from home at times, but it's also introduced us to some new freedoms as well, hasn't it? Like loungewear whilst we're working. Maybe being able to take children to school, go for a walk during the day, walk the dog, have a home cooked lunch, or maybe even an extra hour's sleep in the morning because we're not doing that commute. And naturally, returning to the workplace will bring, you know, it'll bring those losses, that sense of loss of these newfound freedoms that people may have had. And it's shifted our employees' priorities in life. So just to have that awareness that this could be going on, that well-being is now something that our employees are actually valuing more, they want it and they're expecting it. So encourage discussion about what your employees need and want at this stage. Could you consider maybe retaining some of those freedoms that employees have gained during lockdown? You know, could it be a bit more of a relaxed lunch break to incorporate the new exercise regimes they've found? Flexi hours a couple of days a week so they can take children to school or pick up. Okay. And we're also seeing as well this hybrid way of working. Some businesses have understandably, switched to this hybrid way of working, maybe 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, vice versa, as a way or an opportunity to reduce costs. But obviously these changes come with risks, don't they, to someone's mental well-being, and we need to acknowledge that. Being in the office, it creates connection, belonging, collaboration, really, really important things for our psychological well-being. And this may have a knock-on effect to productivity. So at Hope Health, we say that, you know, if you're adopting this hybrid way of working, you need to adopt a hybrid well-being strategy as well. And the practical way we do that is by having a virtual and a face-to-face offering for employees at all times. And finally, one thing that I'd like to reflect on here in this Life After Lockdown section is around mental health issues. So we still don't know the impact that COVID has had on people's mental health. Lots of research being done at the moment, but the general consensus is it may have profoundly impacted our employees' mental health in different ways. So it's important to be mindful of any emerging or existing mental health problems. For some people, lockdown may have reduced any triggers that they had, and maybe thinking about going back to work could come to the forefront. And for other people, you know, they may have developed unhelpful coping strategies to manage their mental health throughout the pandemic, throughout lockdown, throughout working from home remotely. So it's really, really crucial that managers are equipped to recognise those signs and symptoms of mental health issues, and that they feel comfortable to open up conversations with their staff about their mental health. And that can be obtained, that can happen by embedding mental health first aiders in your workplace, but also empower your employees to look after their mental well-being, be aware of when something has changed in their mental health. And again, mental health awareness training will empower your employees to understand that, know the ways in which they can protect their mental well-being and when something has changed. So when it comes to mental health in the workplace and the impact that poor mental well-being can have, prevention and early intervention is really, really key here. In mental health first aid, we use a model called the mental health continuum, which I've just popped up here. This helps us understand that we all have mental health, okay, and it can move and it can change just like our physical health does over time, depending on life circumstances and risk factors. Right now, it's important to understand that some of our people's mental health may have moved on this or shifted on this continuum. So you can see my person, top right-hand corner here. This is where we all want to be, this top right-hand quadrant. We're loving life here, maximum mental well-being, no diagnosis of a mental health condition. But like I say, our people's mental health may have shifted slightly during the pandemic. We may have found that people are down here in the bottom right-hand quadrant, where there's not a diagnosis, but they're definitely experiencing signs and symptoms of poor mental well-being. And in the workplace, in order to prevent our employees moving around this continuum and it escalating, we need to create that open culture where people feel comfortable talking about their mental health as they do tea and toast. Okay, we need to give them the tools to manage their own mental well-being as well, and deal with stress, adversity, and build resilience. In the workplace, stress is one of the major risk factors for employees developing mental illness and moving around this continuum. So what I'd like to do is provide you with some some stress prevention tools here. But before we do that, I'd like to maybe explore stress a little bit more via a poll and explore what stresses might be coming up for you at the moment. So I'm just going to launch our second poll, where it asks about stress and what is stressing you at the moment. I'm just going to launch this poll. Again, it's anonymous, so please don't worry. It's get involved if you feel comfortable, but it is anonymous. So what is stressing you at the moment? There's some options here: workload, finances, catching COVID, returning to the workplace, job security, lack of routine, maybe some health concerns, mental or physical, worrying about family, or nothing is stressing you out. I'll give it a few moments here to this poll, and then I'll launch the results. Brilliant. Right, I'm going to launch these results now and we'll look into them together. So 50%, half of you, workload, top of the list. It always is. Okay, so 50% of you is workload, 23% finances. Let's have a think. Family, again, is another one that is very, very high. 9%, nothing stressing you out. Fantastic. Lack of routine. Yeah, we're seeing that a lot at the moment, aren't we, with COVID. And 20% returning to the workplace. Excellent. So, stress shows up in many different ways for different people. We can't avoid stress coming into our lives, can we? Stress and pressure, it can be a positive state of mind if it's managed correctly. Has anybody ever been a little bit stressed about a deadline, and that little bit of stress has just pushed you towards completing that task? So stress can be really helpful, but too much stress for too long can be really, really bad for us. And at the moment, our people may have had this one whole year during this pandemic of prolonged stress, potentially. And the World Health Organization, they actually explain that there's an increase in burnout at the moment. And burnout is that chronic workplace stress that hasn't been managed. Okay, so too much stress for too long can be bad for us. It's important that we manage stress. And one way we do this in mental health first aid is to introduce you to the stress container. You may have heard it be called a stress bucket. So our stress container here, we all have a stress container. It's represented by that triangle there. And we all have different size stress containers. So some people can have a really large stress container, they can fill it up, and some people can have slightly smaller stress containers. Stress will always flow into our containers. We can't avoid that. But what we want it to flow out as well. So what we can do is we can adopt helpful coping strategies, and that's represented by that tap at the bottom. So a helpful coping strategy could be maybe talking to somebody. It could be exercising. It could be going for a walk, mindfulness, eating well, getting an early night. It could be having that glass of wine, that gin at the end of a tough day, thinking, do you know what, I had a stressful day, I deserve that glass of wine. But we also have unhelpful coping strategies as well. And again, this could be alcohol as well. So when one glass turns into a bottle and a bottle turns into 2 bottles, it can become an unhelpful coping strategy. Bottling it up, not talking to people, could also be an unhelpful coping strategy adopted to manage stress. And one that I used to use, overworking. Often people will overwork through stress. Okay, so what happens if we're adopting unhelpful coping strategies is our tap will become blocked and our stress containers will continue to overflow. Now, when you, if you look to the right there, when our containers overflow, that's when we might start to see signs and symptoms of poor mental well-being. It's called emotional snapping. So for me, for example, I know when my stress container is full up, I'll start forgetting things. Yeah, the kids have been left at school before wondering where I am. It's because I've forgotten to pick them up. And I know then my stress container's full up. Nicole, you need to adopt some helpful coping strategies to let out some stress. That's really individual to everybody. Okay, so if somebody can understand what their stress signature is, so what happens when their stress container is full up, they can then start to manage their stress a bit better. They can adopt some helpful coping strategies. They can think, am I using unhelpful ones? Is my tap blocked at the moment? So this is a really useful tool. I mean, we can use it on ourselves, but we can also use it with our teams as well and introduce them to that as a way of managing stress. Because if we can empower our people to look after their own stress containers, it can really be a really positive impact, increase productivity, and keep them mentally well. Okay. There's also the check-in as well. There is a stress indicator tool that I'm not sure if anybody's aware of, but it's actually provided by the government. So there's a stress indicator tool. There's a web page there. Again, I'll share all of the takeaways with everybody afterwards. But this stress indicator tool is a really great way of kind of reflecting on the stress in your organisation at the moment, and kind of risk assess that. I'd probably say not to use this as the only data source, okay, but it could also be used with other relevant data that you may have to provide a more accurate and holistic picture of your organisation. But it's a really, really useful tool that I can recommend. But also weekly check-ins with your people. There's a statistic, 1 in 4 have said that they've had not one wellbeing check-in from their workplace, okay, throughout the pandemic. So it's really, really important to check in with our people and how they're feeling. And a tool that we use again with Mental Health First Aid is this weekly wellbeing checkup. And I've heard of my clients actually booking this into their diaries, scheduling it once a week, a weekly check-in with themselves or with their team. So just some prompts there, how people can check in. Where's their mental health today? How are they feeling mentally and physically? You know, physically, are they sleeping well? Are they drinking enough? They've got a balanced diet, because all of this will impact mental well-being. Are they having any unhelpful thoughts? And reflecting on that stress container as well. What's in their stress container at the moment? And one final tool under prevention as well that I have is this Wellbeing Action Plan. So this is something, a wellbeing action plan is actually something taken from clinical psychology, and will be an action plan that people will put in place with their clinical psychologist in order to manage their well-being. But they're really helpful in the workplace as well. It's a written out plan that can identify what keeps us well and what impacts our mental health. It's really individual to that person, because obviously mental health is very, very much individual. But it's this individual reflection that empowers somebody to protect their well-being. And they may also wish to share that with line managers or with their team, so that, you know, they can look out for signs and symptoms and know what to do and how to help that person. So some of my clients have adopted this wellbeing action plan into their induction, that orientation back to work, and use that as a time to talk about well-being and talk about mental health. Okay, it's been quite useful during the pandemic as well, when working arrangements have kind of changed quite regularly. So creating new wellbeing action plans as we switched to remote working, and then again when they went back to working, and then again when we went back into lockdowns. Feels like we're doing the hokey cokey a little bit, doesn't it? But yeah, they're useful to do and to review regularly as well. So always don't just do a wellbeing action plan and leave it there. Review them regularly as well. Okay, because we can log any new helpful findings, switch out helpful coping strategies for other ones as well. I would note as well with the wellbeing action plans that they're most effectively applied as an organisation when you've already set that stage for talking about mental health and wellbeing. Okay, so often after a mental health awareness type training has happened, you know, when you've set wellbeing as part of your overall strategy and started to create that culture, because then what happens is people will feel more comfortable around that topic of talking about wellbeing and mental health. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is look into what we can do if we know somebody is struggling. Okay, so if we have spotted signs and symptoms, what can we do if somebody is struggling? And again, our final poll for today, if you knew someone in your workplace was struggling with their mental health, how comfortable would you feel approaching them about this? So I'm just going to launch this poll now. Would you feel a state of panic? You know, I don't know what to say. How do I say it? What if I say something wrong? Or you might not know what to say, but you think you need to say something, or very comfortable, you've trained in this. Okay, brilliant. Just a couple more seconds and then I'll launch the results. I'm really pleased actually that 0% so far have said that they would feel a state of panic and not know what to say, but that is absolutely normal as well. 50% of UK employees said that they've experienced mental health in the workplace, but less than half of that group actually felt confident to open up a conversation about it. Okay, so let's launch this poll. 53% said that they might not know the right things to say, but they think they would definitely say something, that they need to say something. And 48% of you very comfortable, you've trained in this. Brilliant. Okay. So again, like I said, it's all very normal to kind of not know what to say, but feel that you need to say something. 57% of UK employees said this. One tool that I'd like to give you today, if you haven't already explored it, is the Take 10 Together Toolkit. So in Mental Health First Aid, we teach people how to have this conversation and the skills to recognise signs and symptoms. And the first step on that journey to helping somebody might be taking 10 minutes out to open up a meaningful conversation about their mental health. So the Take 10 Together Toolkit is a really useful one, just to prompt how we might have this conversation. So it's about considering your setting. And at the moment, this is really difficult, isn't it? Because we're remote working, we're virtually supporting people, but choosing a setting that's comfortable for them as well, where they feel comfy, and having plenty of time, no disturbances, kind of not feeling rushed to have this conversation. We've got plenty of time. And also some useful questions there. Often people say, I don't even know what open questions to ask, where to start. But the best place to start is asking them how they're feeling at this moment. And how long they've been feeling like this for as well. Because it's normal, isn't it, to feel certain things for a moment in time. It's an unprecedented situation that we're in. It's understandable that people may be feeling certain things, but if it's been for a prolonged length of time, that's when we might start to think about exploring some professional support that person might need. Asking that person how they'd like to be helped as well, so being that listening ear, but also ask them, how can I help you? What can I do to support you? And how to listen. It's a really, really great video, if you haven't seen it already, by a lady called Brené Brown. So if you type it into YouTube, it's Sympathy versus Empathy by Brené Brown. Really great video about how to listen and how not to listen. But it's when we're listening to somebody, we need to come with a set of attitudes, and that is by being non-judgmental. Quite difficult because our brains are wired to make judgments all of the time. But if we can listen and communicate non-judgmentally with that person, accept their experience as it is. A really great example of this was at the beginning of lockdown. I said to my dad, oh my gosh, I don't know how to manage schooling and working. This is so hard. He said, oh, well, during the war, children were sent away. So he was trivializing how I was experiencing this particular situation because of his own kind of frame of reference of knowing that children were sent away during the war. And what it did was I shut down. I didn't talk to him about what I was experiencing. It trivialized how I was feeling. So we need to respect someone, you know, how they are experiencing this situation and listen without judgment. Give that reassurance as well that the door is always open. And really mean it as well, you know, that they can talk to us, but give that reassurance as well that there's lots of support. If you've got an EAP system, signpost of the EAP system. Sometimes people don't even know that they've got an employee assistance program that's really helpful in the workplace. And make sure we follow up as well with that person. So not just have one conversation and they talk about how they're feeling and open up completely, and then we don't talk to them again. Follow up, ask them how they're doing. If we left the conversation, they said that they were going to pop to the GP to talk about how they were feeling, ask them how that went. Ask them if there's anything practically or emotionally that you can do to support them in this moment. Okay. So that's the Take 10 Together toolkit. Sometimes people fear not saying anything at all because they're worried about saying the wrong thing. But trust me, it's better to say something rather than nothing at all. When I was feeling the most alone and hopeless, if someone had sat me down and said, Nicole, I'm worried, I'm concerned about you, you know, how can I help? I would have felt less alone. I would have known where to go for help, and it would have started that road to recovery a lot sooner. So it's not what you say sometimes, it's how you make someone feel. So if you come from a place of empathy and non-judgment, you can never ever go wrong with supporting somebody. So those are just some of the tips and tools when supporting somebody right now, if you haven't taken mental health first aid training, and some of the toolkit today that we've got here. So remembering that workplace wellbeing strategy is going to be key in getting us through this next part of the pandemic, and create that culture. Use this as an opportunity to create that culture if you haven't already. But also remember to engage and consult and review with your people every step of the way. Ask them what they need, what they want from you at this moment in time. And if you haven't got that wellbeing strategy in place, start to think about how you can align that with business objectives and build your business case, because there is a huge business case for having a robust wellbeing strategy. But also it's a really important time to train your line managers and give them the skill. They want to help their people. They want to help their teams with their mental well-being, but we need to give them the skills in order to do that, to spot signs and symptoms, open up those conversations and support somebody through a change in their mental health. But also I think it's really, really important to empower employees to take responsibility for their own mental well-being as well. So if we can have engaging wellbeing programs in place, somebody would be a lot more open to looking after their mental wellbeing and being proactive in that. I think a lot of the time it's a lack of awareness that something's changed, that something's not right with mental wellbeing. So if we can give them that awareness training, that we all have mental health, and it's, you know, just like we have physical health, and it will change over time. And there's certain risk factors that will pose a threat to our mental health at different times of our lives. And there's things that we can do to manage it so that it doesn't escalate to the point of mental illness, and that early intervention can happen sooner. So if anybody is interested in the mental health first aid training with Hope Health, it's the MHFA England programme that we run. That's accredited by the Royal Society of Public Health. There's a programme for all employees. There's to embed mental health first aid training to the whole organisation. So whether that's the full mental health first aid course and or the half-day awareness piece or the one-day champion course, and they can be delivered online or face-to-face depending on your workplace situation. If you just have one or two people that you want to place on a training course, we hold regular open courses. The next one is the 17th to 18th of May online. But if you've got groups of a minimum of 8 people, then we can run the private courses as well. And of course, everybody that's attended today's webinar will receive a discount for any mental health first aid training. But we also have the Engaging Wellbeing programmes as well. We've brought together some of the UK's leading field experts when it comes to workplace mental health and wellbeing to create a virtual wellbeing programme through lockdown to encourage and motivate employees to take care of their mental wellbeing, but looking at that holistic approach. So looking at nutrition, looking at sleep and how that can affect our mental health, men's mental health and how they can manage their mental well-being, menopause and mental health. Okay, we have a clinical psychologist that has tweaked the training that she delivers depending on the pandemic. So when we were homeschooling, it was how to manage homeschooling and mental health at the same time. So the programs that we can curate are very much based on a business requirement, what you're finding from your audits, from your surveys, what your people need, but also wellbeing events and retreats as well, which are really great to set that scene, create that platform for that wellbeing culture that you're looking to create. And if you're stuck for ideas, we've got this mental wellbeing planner as well. Throughout the year, there's so many wellbeing days each month that you can maybe align activities with. So I can share this calendar with you as well, just to give you a bit of inspiration there for your wellbeing strategy and plan for the whole year. That's brought us to the end of the presentation, but I wonder if there's any questions that anybody has that they'd like to ask at this stage. I'm just going to bring Emma in, if you can, to see if there's any questions. Please feel free to put them into the chat.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Nicole, amazing. So good to hear you speak on the building resilience and so many takeaways on that. We have recorded it as well, so if anybody wants a copy, let us know. Yeah, we look forward to being in touch with you over the next few days.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here. Lindsay, hello Lindsay. Do you have any more guidance on taking WAPs to the next stage? Okay, absolutely. I think what I'll do is, Lindsay, my email address is at the bottom there. I've got some really great guidance there when it comes to the WAP. So if you do want to pop me an email, and then I can send you over that guidance as well. They're really, really helpful. And Katie, what are you seeing organisations prioritise in terms of wellbeing? Most definitely, there's been a sharp rise in mental health first aiders. I can't tell you how many mental health first aiders I've trained during this pandemic. It was something at the beginning of the pandemic that a lot of clients were saying, yeah, we need to get mental health first aiders in place. But as soon as the pandemic hit, everyone was kind of like, we should have done this sooner. Being able to spot signs and symptoms initially is the hardest part. And once people have the skills in order to do that, they can start that conversation and help support people. So most definitely that is a priority, but also that awareness piece as well is really, really important. Okay, so everybody having an awareness that they have mental health and there's ways that they can protect it. And that opens up that conversation and creates that culture that, okay, as an organisation, we're all talking about our mental health and we can talk about it, and we have mental health first aiders in our organisation for us to turn to should we need some support. Okay, mentioned measuring wellbeing. Do you have any guidance on that? From Chrissy. Thank you, Chrissy. I absolutely do. And again, I can send you some KPIs that you can apply to measuring your wellbeing strategy. So I'd love to send you that via email as well. So Chrissy, do you mind popping me an email, and then I can reply to that and provide you with that guidance. Are you doing anything specifically for Mental Health Awareness Week? We are. Emma.
We have a lot of lunch and learn sessions going ahead, actually, with lots of different specialists, so nutritionists through to positive psychologists and sleep therapists, but they're actually all booked privately, and we do have some availability still. So if you were interested in having a lunch and learn session specifically for your workplace, let us know. The rates are really good. It's an hour-long private session, and we can arrange that on any topic of your choice. We've got about 40 topics now, so let us know if you want to arrange something, put something in the diary for that week.
Yeah, because Mental Health Awareness Week, the theme this year is nature. So we've got a nature package that's tailored to the theme. So if you want to explore that, again, give us pop us an email, and Emma can help you with that. There's still some availability left for some of our speakers.
I think the next one is Jane.
Yeah, I'll send that recording to, well, if you'd like the recording, maybe email me if you would like it. I don't want to spam you all with things that you don't need. Please do email us. It'll be a large file. Yep, okay, great. So thank you, Barbara. Okay, Jane, you feel the business struggle with balancing wellbeing needs and needs of the business. Yeah, putting more stress on people in one breath and then pushing mental wellbeing in another. Jane, are you still there, Jane? Would you mind coming in and expanding on that a bit more? If you're still there. Is she gone?
One of the ways that we find that people manage that in a business is having dedicated people to support, don't we, Nicole? So we find that obviously the mental health first aider is a really great support because it can be at any level. It doesn't have to necessarily be the boss, the one with all the pressures. It could be someone, lower down in the hierarchy, so to speak, or at totally different levels, so that people feel that there's more than one person that's approachable. It could be a male, it could be a female, in lots of different departments, to make it less of a burden on one person, and then maybe just having an ambassador internally to help kind of support people via email and to direct them to the mental health first aider really helps.
Yeah, sorry, I am still here, sorry.
Oh, hello,
Hi. Yeah, so the struggle I have is I'm a team manager and I'm a mental health first aider. So obviously in one breath I'm like, oh, we need to do this, you've got to do this much work, and then in the other hand you're trying to support people, and it's a struggle, I suppose, for the business, but I just feel sometimes it's quite conflicting. It
can be, yeah, and it's really important if you do have mental health first aiders that they're looked after as well in the workplace.
Yeah.
And MHFA have actually just launched an app whereby we can monitor and look after our mental health first aiders a lot more and help them thrive in that role, because obviously they're doing their day job, but they're also a mental health first aider as well. But it's about creating those clear boundaries as well as a mental health first aider, keeping conversations to half an hour, creating those very clear boundaries. We're not going into that counselling role, we are signposting. So I hold a lot of thriving as an MHFA session, so I'll often train mental health first aiders in an organisation, and then 3 months down the line we'll do a thriving session, and we'll do that piece around your role, your responsibility as a mental health first aider, and how to balance that with your role in the organisation as well, and building those boundaries, but also engaging in that self-care. But I find that it's about, line managers need to understand that their people might be, if they're in that role of a mental health first aider, there's that extra pressure on them to be supporting, team members, employees. So that line manager, notify the line manager that I am having mental health first aid conversations, and it takes up X amount of my time. And often after these conversations, they can be quite exhausting. Okay, so is there something that you need to do for yourself after those conversations in order to balance your own well-being as well? Do there need to be more mental health first aiders in the workplace so that that pressure is not just on one person?
That quite nicely links up actually to Ben's question, is would you assess who does the MHFA training? I suppose I'm asking, would everyone be a good MHFA? Great
question, Ben. So how we recruit mental health first aiders, or how organisations do it, it varies. Okay, so some of my clients have said, so for every physical first aider that we have, we want to have a mental health first aider. So they will go out initially to their physical health first aiders and say, would you like to be an MHFA? At MHFA England, we say 1 in 10 people we're aiming to have trained in MHFA skills. So again, that's another ratio that you could use. But that recruitment process requires, I think, a set of questions that we might need to pose as part of the application process. I would encourage you to have an application process. And that set of questions could be setting out what the role is, so that they're very clear on what this role is as a mental health first aider. And we can help you do this. So if you are interested in that recruitment process, we can help you, because it's very much individual to each organisation and how many you're looking to train. It could be, you know, understanding why that person wants to be a mental health first aider as well. So lots of different questions. I would very much encourage you to have an application process.
That's exactly what Ciara wrote as well, just to let you know.
Yeah.
In this box.
Yeah, I think the best, you know, what you find is a lot of people that do step forward and want to be a mental health first aider, they may have their own experience with mental health, maybe something that they're extremely passionate about. And yeah, often they make the best mental health first aiders. So opening it up to everybody, I would encourage you to do. Katie, you've recently run the MHFA England Half Day Awareness course. Keen to build on this and continue the education, the awareness piece. Do you have any advice as to what you've seen work well? So once you start, that awareness piece is often a really great place to start. Sometimes people start at the MHFA, you know, having those 4 mental health first aiders, and then they do the awareness piece, and others do it the other way around. I would most definitely continue that. If you haven't done MHFA, so if those line managers haven't done mental health first aid training, if they want, you know, if there's an interest in becoming an MHFA, follow that route. But otherwise, you've set that stage already to talk about mental health and create that awareness. The next stage would be to carry on creating that culture. And it's about that holistic approach to well-being. So continually talking about how we can prevent and protect our mental health by engaging with nutrition, sleep, exercise, and building resilience. So engaging with those sort of topics and putting that education out there as well.
Yeah, just to add in there, we've been working a lot with companies who are experiencing exactly the same thing. They don't want it to be a tick box exercise to have MHFAs in the company. They want it to be part of a wider cultural change in the company to completely transform people's workplace wellbeing. And that's exactly what Nicole does with Hope Health and through the lunch and learn sessions that we have. So it's basically just reminding people through not too regular, but say bi-monthly sessions or an email drop to them just to say, listen, what are you struggling with this month? Or here's a new checklist of how to look after yourself at home, or, you know, little bits of information that remind them actually, yeah, workplace wellbeing still is really important and it is taken seriously here, and pointing them in the right direction, as Nicole's already said, signposting them to the help internally that they can reach. But we work together with companies to build programs for the year. So I've had quite a few of those recently where we go, okay, after every 3 months we put in a lunch and learn session, or after every so many do an MHFA kind of like reboot where you just grab everyone together, go, right guys, how are you dealing with being MHFA? Is this working for you? What bits are you struggling with? And then Nicole can help and support them around that. So let us know if you want any.
Yeah. There's also the clinics as well. If they've done the half-day awareness course, you could host regular clinics in your workplace, maybe put a communication out there that there will be a clinic every month where people can book a slot to talk to one of our MHFAs about mental health, you know, their mental health, anything that they're experiencing at that time. So clinics are all quite useful as well, regular monthly clinics too. Because sometimes actually starting that conversation or approaching an MHFA is quite daunting, but if there's a clinic and a space and a time that's set aside, people might want to book into that clinic and they've got their time, they know that they're going to be talking to someone then. Okay, any other questions? Brilliant. So what I'll do is, if anybody would like any of those takeaways, Emma has put in the chat there my email address. So please do feel free to email me if there's any questions you've got following this that you didn't ask today. But thank you so much, everybody, for spending this time with us this afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And hopefully I look forward to connecting with some of you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks now.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome.